question for you.
Just this lady here, then you.
At a time when India is dealing with incidents with, in the name, hate in the name of religion, and we have sensitive relations with our neighbor right now, do you think this film is very relevant? And also, at the same time, do you think it is a risk to release it right now? How will it be accepted?
Well, I think all filmmaking is a risk. You know, anyone who's trying to say something different, it's always a risk as a filmmaker, but you have to follow your heart and you have to say what you think. You know, that's what artists do. I want to tell you that my editor in England, Valeria, he was Italian. And when we were cutting the film, you know, every cut, you know, when we screened it for the producers, he would always cry at the end, you know, as an Italian. He was very emotional. And he would always cry. And whenever I wanted to keep something in that I knew would be more appealing to the Indian side of me, he was my biggest defender against people who would say, oh, no, it's too emotional, it's too emotional. And I said, no, no, I want this sequence, I want to do this one. So Valeria was there with me throughout that. But then, when we were halfway through editing, Brexit happened. And suddenly, he became a refugee because he didn't know if he was going to stay in England, or he had English wife, 2 children. He didn't know if he had to stay or go to Italy. At the same time, we saw a rise in hate crime. You know, suddenly immigrants were being blamed for problems, you know, because of the rise of the right. You had the rise of the right in Le Pen, in France, in Germany, you know. It was a very tricky time when we were editing the film. So I think that this rise of the right, wherever you are, you know, ultimately, you know, one has to stand up for what is right. That this is a nation that is built on the philosophies of Gandhiji, you know. And when I watched the film back, the first time I watched the finished film back, I sat in the cinema, in the screening room, and I turned to Paul, my husband, and I said, you know what? There's 2 people from the past who I think would really appreciate the film. And one is Gandhiji, you know, it's his philosophy, the film. And the second one is Guru Nanak Dev Ji, you know, who says, before you see yourself as a Hindu or a Sikh or a Muslim, see yourself as a human. So for me, that wherever I went, these 2, Gandhiji and Guru Nanak Dev Ji, are with me. They're on either side of me. And I think that is the reason why I was able to make the film, because I kept going back to them.
Hi, Gurinder, I have a question for you. Um, yeah, just wanted to know, ma'am, how different is the Hindi cut from the film's original British release?
Same, exactly the same. Exactly the same.
This is asking you, so considering, you know, there's some amount of criticism as far as the Viceroy House is concerned. Some said that it totally disregards the freedom struggle in India. Some said that it was anti-Muslim. And there's some amount of brickbats. Now that it's releasing for the Indian audience, what sort of response do you want from this film?
Well, I think that you cannot make a film like this without upsetting people. I mean, because everybody has their own version of history, you know. As the film says, it opens with history as written by the victors. You know, this film would be very different if it was made by a Pakistani in Pakistan, an Indian from India, or a white British person in Britain. But it's the unique combination of who I am that has made it my vision. So people who will have something to say, it's because they want their own version of history. You know, they want to see things their way, and that's perfectly valid. You know, I am really not worried about people wanting to see more of this or more of that or more of, you know, this side, you know, more of Jinnah or more of Neruji or more of this. I'm happy with that, because the thing is, this is everybody's story, and everybody has to tell their own stories. And this is not going to be the last film on Partition. There'll be many more. But this is my version, and this is how I see the world, and this is my record of how I see the events that defined me, my family, my community, and my nations, you know, all my nations, at that time in 1947. So I absolutely appreciate some people having their own comments, and they're 100% right, because it's an emotive subject. You know, I think for Pakistan, you know, it's going to be a very emotional subject. In England, what has been very interesting for me is to see the way British Pakistanis have seen the film, so, you know, compared to a few Pakistanis from Pakistan, because there was a Muslim writer in Britain who said that anybody attacking this film, yes, it was Fatima Bhutto, after her article came out, which was very much from a privileged Pakistani perspective, because for her, I think it's very hard to appreciate that her film, that her country was born out of such pain, basically. It's hard for people to understand that and appreciate that, because people want to rewrite history. But I appreciate her anger. I appreciate, you know, her position. It's hard for young countries to find their place in a global world, you know. But for me, I think that in Britain, what was great was a lot of British Pakistanis saw the film, came up to me, were very emotional, and said, we didn't know our history. We didn't know any of this, and thank you for telling us it. And so I think this is why sometimes it might be hard for people to understand, but being a British Asian, you know, I have close friends who are British Pakistani as well as Indian, as well as white, and we have a different cultural experience than, say, Indians and Pakistanis here on the subject. So I think I've been able to stand back, you know, and look at it in a different way, not necessarily the right way or the wrong way, but in a different way, and hopefully shine a light on what it means for me and my ancestors, and why my grandmother suffered, as I said, and why I lost my Puaji, who would have been 72 today, had she not died during that time.